Welcome to the debate. Today we are stepping through the garden gate and straight into the kitchen. We're looking at the Allotment Cookbook Through the Year by Caroline Bretherton.
It's a fascinating text because it serves two very distinct masters. I mean, on one hand, it's a horticultural guide, a manual on how to keep things alive. But really, it's a culinary manual for what you do when you've succeeded. Organizing, over 200 recipes by the rhythm of the seasons?
Exactly. But beneath the planting charts and the crop rotation advice, there is a fundamental philosophical tension here. It really is a question of consumption. When you've spent months tending to the soil, weeding, watering, fighting off slugs, what is the highest form of respect for that harvest?
And we're focusing specifically on the spring harvest today. So the central question we're debating is this. Is the produce best honored by the purist approach? Eating crops immediately, maybe raw, or just simply steamed to capture their fleeting natural sugars?
Or is the true gardener's art found in what we're calling the interventionist approach? This means using complex cooking, bold spices, preservation techniques, all to transform the produce and manage those inevitable gluts.
I'm the advocate. I'll be arguing that the flavor of a pea or an asparagus spear is perfect the moment it leaves the soil. Cooking should merely heat, not hide it.
And I'm the dissenter. I'll argue that a true allotment gardener has to be a chef and a preserver. To really respect the harvest, you have to use every part, pair vegetables with strong flavors like bacon and spices, and of course, preserve them for the lean months. Okay, let's begin with the philosophy of the harvest itself. Bretherton writes really beautifully, I think, about the emotional connection to the land. She describes that particular sense of satisfaction of surveying your work in the early evening. She calls it a weariness filled with satisfaction. My position is that this emotion, it is the seasoning. When you're in that moment, holding a basket of spring crops, dirt under your fingernails, the produce is already perfect.
It's a romantic image, certainly. And I don't deny the poetry of the allotment. But poetry doesn't put dinner on the table for a family of 4 who might be skeptical about eating a pile of raw leaves.
Take the spring crops, asparagus, peas, broad beans. They are defined by their delicacy. Bretherton explicitly notes with peas that natural sugars turn to starch very quickly after picking. That's a chemical fact. The moment you snap that pod from the vine, a clock starts ticking. The sweetness degrades. So to honor that biological reality, you have to eat them immediately. The text even says the best way to eat baby spinach is raw in salads, straight from picking. My argument is that the recipes in this book that require heavy processing, pureeing, baking in pastry, drowning in cream, they're actually diluting the very thing we worked so hard to grow. The prime moment, as the book calls it, is when asparagus is no more than 15 centimeters high. That's when you eat it. You don't need to do anything else.
I see the appeal of that immediacy, and I absolutely agree about the sugar-to-starch conversion. That's a crucial insight from the book. However, I simply don't buy that eating raw vegetables is the only or even the best way to respect the produce. You're ignoring the other reality of the allotment, which Bretherton emphasizes again and again, the glut. She writes, and I quote, "Every gardener knows that a glut of a certain type of fruit or vegetable is inevitable. You can't simply eat everything raw when you have, say, 5 kilos of broad beans ripening at the same time."
You can certainly try. It's a good problem to have.
You get bored. And as the author notes, eating the same thing every day for a month could get repetitive. My position is that this book's true value is in its creative solutions for vegetables that are, to quote the text, often sidelined as a support act. The transformer philosophy is about giving vegetables a starring role. I mean, look at the white asparagus recipe. That's not just nature, that's human ingenuity. You have to grow it in the dark, forcing the plant, banking up the earth so chlorophyll never develops, and then you serve it with a homemade mayonnaise of Dijon mustard, white wine vinegar, and tarragon. That is a superior culinary experience to a raw stock because it elevates the ingredient through technique. You are manipulating the environment to create a flavor that nature wouldn't provide on its own.
I think we need to look closer at that elevation because often I find it looks more like a burial. Let's dig into the first core topic of our debate, the asparagus protocol.
A regal vegetable, as the book describes it. It's the king of the spring garden.
Exactly. And because it's regal, it requires a respectful minimal court. The text provides a recipe for char-grilled asparagus with hollandaise. This is the correct approach. You heat a griddle pan, brush it with a little oil, and you cook it for 5 to 6 minutes until it's lightly charred. That's it. You're preserving the texture. The book advises picking when the spear's no thicker than your index finger. When you have that level of precision in the harvest, why would you want to complicate it? The hollandaise, the egg yolks, butter, lemon, it's there to coat the vegetable, not compete with it. It's a fat emulsion that carries the flavor of the spear. It doesn't mask it.
But you're limiting the potential of the ingredient. That char-grilled recipe is fine, but it's one note. It's the standard bistro approach. I want to draw your attention to the zesty asparagus and courgette pasta. This recipe understands that asparagus can carry a chorus. It combines the spears with garlic, white wine, capers, and lemon zest.
You're drowning it in acid and brine.
I'm balancing it. The saltiness of the capers and the acidity of the lemon zest, according to the text, really bring out the freshness. It transforms a side dish into a substantial supper. But if you want to talk about true transformation, we have to talk about the asparagus quiche.
I was afraid you'd bring that up.
It's a masterpiece of the interventionist mindset. You're taking, 175 grams of asparagus, but you're pairing it with 115 grams of cream cheese, mature cheddar, double cream, and thyme, all of it encased in a pastry made with lard and butter.
You have just listed 5 ingredients that are heavier and richer than the asparagus itself. In that quiche, the asparagus is just green decoration for a block of dairy. You're hiding the labor of growing it. If I spend 2 years establishing an asparagus bed, which is how long the book reminds us it takes, I want to taste the asparagus, not the mature cheddar. The cheddar is aggressive. It fights the nuance of the vegetable.
You are tasting the asparagus, but you're tasting it as a comfort food. It turns a delicate, fleeting ingredient into a hearty meal that feeds a family. A raw spear is a snack, a quiche is a dinner. And let's look at preservation. The book notes that if you want to freeze asparagus, you have to blanch it or char grill it first. You can't just keep it raw. You have to alter its state. That's a form of intervention you accept, isn't it?
I accept it as a necessary evil to avoid waste, not as a culinary virtue. Blanching is damage control. It stops the degradation, but it certainly doesn't improve the flavor. It's life support for a vegetable, not a spa treatment. But let's move on to a vegetable where this dispute between waste and taste is even more pronounced. The pea controversy.
Well, I am firmly in the camp of the pea soup with mint gremolata.
Of course you are. You like to take a simple thing and complicate it.
No, I like to be efficient, and here's why this recipe matters. It uses the pods. It calls for 550 grams of peas in their pods, roughly cut up. The soup stock is made by boiling the pods that most people, and I suspect you, would just throw on the compost heap. This is the definition of the transformer mindset. We are extracting value from what is usually discarded. We're respecting the plant by using all of it.
But at what cost to the texture? The recipe itself admits that after boiling these pods, you have to pass through a sieve to remove any tough bits. It's a labor-intensive process to make something edible that was barely edible to begin with. You're boiling fibrous waste to extract a bit of pea essence. Contrast that with the pea and feta salad.
Which is just raw peas and cheese.
It is perfection. You take baby peas, you toss them with watercress, mint, and feta. The text says this shows baby peas at their absolute best. You catch that sugar before it turns to starch. It captures the essence of spring without heavy processing or sieving or cream. It's clean. When you eat that salad, you are tasting the sunlight that hit the garden that morning.
It is clean, but it requires perfection. What do you do when the peas aren't perfect? What do you do when life gets in the way and you harvest 3 days late? The book offers a solution that I suspect you'd reject. Spanish-style peas.
With serrano ham and smoked paprika.
Precisely. The text explicitly says this is a good way to use peas that have grown a little larger and become mealy. The slightly mealy texture stands up to the strong flavors. This is the reality of gardening. Sometimes you miss the harvest window. The purist would maybe discard those peas. The transformer uses smoked paprika and ham to salvage the harvest.
I would argue that masking mealy peas with strong pork flavors admits defeat. The goal should be better harvest timing, picking frequently, as the book advises, not culinary masking. If you're eating mealy peas covered in paprika, you failed the sugar test. You're hiding your horticultural failure under a blanket of cured meat.
Or you've succeeded in feeding yourself despite the imperfections of nature. That's resilience. And honestly, the smokiness of the paprika complements the sweetness that's still in the pea. But let's look at brassicas. This is where your argument for mildness really falls apart. You would likely champion the cauliflower soup.
I would. It's a subtle dish. The recipe calls for toasted coriander seeds, onion, potatoes, stock. It lets the cauliflower remain white and distinct. The coriander adds a subtle spiciness, but it doesn't overwhelm the vegetable's natural nutty flavor. It respects the ingredient.
It sounds incredibly bland. Cauliflower is a canvas, not a soloist. The braised cauliflower recipe is far superior. It acknowledges the global history of spices. You use chili, cumin, black mustard seeds, turmeric. You cook it until the mustard seeds pop.
And turn the cauliflower yellow?
Yes, vibrant yellow, the book calls it. It's saying blandness is not a virtue. By braising it with these spices, you're creating a dish that can stand alone. You are taking a humble, often boring British allotment staple and making it exciting. And frankly, cauliflower needs the help. It has texture, but the flavor is so mild it borders on non-existent without some intervention.
Excitement is one thing, but complete obfuscation is another. I have to express my deep skepticism about the gratin of chard.
A wonderful dish. Why the skepticism?
It is a heart attack on a plate. Listen to these ingredients: 600 milliliters of double cream, 200 grams of pancetta, Parmesan cheese.
It's rich, I'll grant you.
At that point, are you tasting the chard, or are you just tasting salty pork fat and cream? The chard is just a vehicle for the dairy. The book says it turns a healthy vegetable into comfort food, but I'd argue it negates the health benefits entirely. You've taken a leafy green and drowned it in saturated fat.
You're missing the technical reason for the gratin. This is a crucial insight. Charred ribs need longer cooking than the leaves. If you just steam them together, the leaves are mush before the ribs are tender. The gratin method handles this brilliantly. The baking time in the cream allows the ribs to soften perfectly, while the fat protects the leaves from drying out. It unifies the plant. It solves a textural problem with a culinary solution.
It drowns it. But I suppose we have to address the ultimate intervention: preservation. This is where your philosophy moves from cooking to chemistry.
And where the allotment truly pays off. I introduce pick-a-lily.
A yellow pickle.
It's the ultimate expression of the allotment. It involves a mix of vegetables: cauliflower, courgettes, runner beans. You brine them for 24 hours. This is a key technical step. The salt draws out moisture so they stay crunchy. Then you make a paste with vinegar, flour, turmeric, mustard powder. The result is something entirely new that lasts for 6 months. This lets a gardener eat spring beans in the dead of winter. That is magic.
It's utility, certainly, but let's look at the method for preserving vegetables in oil. The text notes that to do this, you have to first cook the vegetables in vinegar to acidify them.
Well, safety first. You have to lower the pH to prevent botulism. You can't just throw raw garlic in oil and leave it on the shelf. That's dangerous.
Exactly. But if you have to acidify a baby courgette in vinegar before you store it in oil, you've fundamentally altered it. You aren't eating preserved asparagus, you're eating a pickle suspended in oil. It promises the texture of the grill but delivers the bite of the vinegar jar. It's an illusion.
It delivers convenience. The mixed vegetable oil preserve, fennel, peppers, asparagus, creates a pantry staple that beats anything store-bought. It's not about mimicking the raw vegetable. It's about having a jar of summer that you can pull off the shelf in January. That's the transformer philosophy, extending the life of the harvest through ingenuity.
I see why you think that, but let me give you a different perspective. The book wraps up by returning to the joy of the harvest. I want to go back to that image of crawling commando style under the netting to pick strawberries. The author admits that despite all the cooking, the weariness filled with satisfaction comes from the harvest itself. Eating a strawberry under the netting is the peak experience. No amount of cream or vinegar or pastry can improve upon that. Complexity often just obscures quality.
I'm sorry, I just don't buy that we can live on raw beans alone. As the author concludes, eating the same thing every day leads to boredom. The true gardener respects the soil by ensuring nothing is wasted, and that requires the alchemy of cooking, turning gluts into pickles, soups, and gratins. The satisfaction isn't just in the picking, it's in eating a zesty asparagus pasta that showcases the produce in a new light. It honors the versatility of the plant, not just its raw state.
Perhaps we can agree on one thing then. Whether you're eating it raw in the garden or in a jar in December, growing your own changes your relationship with food. It makes you value the ingredient in a way that buying it from a supermarket never could. When you know how hard it is to grow a cauliflower, you treat it differently, whether you steam it or spice it.
That is absolutely true. Whether it's a simple steamed spear or a complex piccalilli, the labor behind it definitely makes it taste better. And there's always more to explore in the kitchen garden.
Indeed.